development being facilitated by the African Union in all of Africa at the rate that they want to. We think at a point where a country such as South Africa wants to work with a country such as Egypt, it does not have to think about the cons and pros that it might face. We think at a point where these specific regional organizations do exist, South Africa has to think, at a point where I step out of my regional organization, go trade with a country such as Tanzania, I might be subjected to backlash from the individuals that already exist in my regional organization because they don't want me to go that far. They want me to make the resources stay within that specific regional organization, which is what we don't want to push. We want African countries to be able to work with any African country that feels best maximizes their need without having to check at the policies panel. What we have a problem with is the policies that exist with these regional organizations. The policy that tells them try to keep the minerals centralized at that specific area. And that is counterintuitive to what we are trying to prove, such as Africans and the whole thing of Pan-Africanism. We don't want to have that specific thing being propagated within our society. And we tell that there's a better counterfactual that can exist within our society. We tell you, on our side of the house, such as OG, at a point where we have a regional organization being banned and neglected and not actually existing, we can actually have more productivity between African countries with one another. At a point where we do away with something like that, it won't be that gang type of nature. Because I'm Zimbabwe or in Southern Africa, and South Africa has a specific feud with Nigeria, then you're not allowed to trade with Togo. It means that won't exist. It means Togo can go to anyone without thinking of the ramifications of policies that they opted into. We tell you that this cannot really happen at a faster rate than we want to. At a point where it can be facilitated by the African Union. We think there's a body that's unbiased and wants to see the whole specific continent move forward as a continent in terms of inclusivity and Pan-Africanism. The African Union can facilitate that. We think the African Union can make sure that people have can make sure that people are well sought after by making sure that they redistribute specific resources to strategic areas where they feel they can benefit the whole Africa. We think at a point where the body, such as the African Union, that already exists by the amalgamation of all these specific countries coming together to make a decision that's pro-Africa, we think at a point where they can forget about their regional millions or their regional societies. They might come with more productive plans for the specific continent. Any POI from the opposing side?
Don't you already have Africans already cooperating well to such as the free business for these planations?
We think to the point that we as a South African having to travel to Kenya, I had to be subjected to so many checks and balances right there because I come from another regional organization, but you have a Ugandan that could just walk across the border because they exist within that specific regional organization is quite problematic. What we want is to best maximize relationships between all countries within Kenya, not me as a South African to feel like I'm an outsider because I don't exist within that specific regional organization. Understand, our problem is that when countries want to work with someone outside a specific regional organization in Africa, like from an East African and a West African countries want to work together, they are more subjected to backlash from their regional organization. I told you, the policy that exists has actually drawn up specific policies that say you are encouraged to work within this specific regional organization. You are barred from working outside this specific regional organization with other African countries, centralize most of our goods to our people. Hence we see how a lot of countries within Africa have to export most of their goods from European countries or Chinese countries. We see it as a problem if we see a lot of Chinese individuals going to countries such as Kenya and building the roads, the freeway and the express that exist in Kenya, and it's not built by a country like Rwanda that is quite technologically advanced and has the materials to help the specific country because it does not exist within that specific regional organization. We think if we did not have this specific regional organization existing, a country such as Kenya would have went to a specific country like South Africa and be like, you have done such a specific road at that specific price that we want, so we want you to do it at a much more cheaper price because we want to coerce and actually have a bigger society that can actually speak about better impact within society. We think at the point where we do this, we have centralization of all our minerals and all our gold within our countries. We think that's the reason why colonization existed in the first place. Because we trusted individuals who are not African, we wanted this whole thing of tribalism and chiefdom and saying that we don't want to work together and do away with this thing of Xhosas and Zulus together, Igbos and Shonas together. But we want this thing where everyone can come together and not be penetrated by the West. We need Africa to come together because that is the threat that exists between African countries, which is the way. We think it's much more easier for Asian countries to penetrate to African markets because they know how separated they are. At a point where the African Union facilitates growth for everyone, it means that we can avoid and show you why African Union is the best actor to do so, because it already exists to make sure that people like get the world that they want to live in, which is of best maximum utility. Thank you.
So, pardon, the motion here is that this House regrets the establishment of regional blocks in Africa, that is COMESA, ECOWAS, SADC, and EAC. First of all, I want to begin with a point of rebuttal from our esteemed OG, in that he brought a point on inclusivity and raised an argument that one belonging to a regional bloc, belonging to a certain region in a nation will feel hindered to be able to freely access another country that is affiliated with another given regional bloc in another region. So, pardon, we feel that this argument bears no merit in this particular debate because these are regional blocs. They will do whatever it takes in order to maximize their operations, in order to get a net positive effect. The OO is highly convicted that because we need to, first of all, paint a clear picture of what African nations include. These are developing nations. Most of them are developing nations, and we need to have operations that improve on our way of doing business. That is, we also need a sense of unity because, first of all, these blocks, they are aimed mostly to enhance these operations. So, them bringing this point here, we feel that it destroys their case instead of in place of trying to argue, because I take my view in the 5th minute. Because they struggle economically, therefore they need these blocks in order to enhance their trade and operations. So by them bringing that point, we feel that that point bears no merit and it was actually to our advantage. So moving on swiftly to our points, why do we need these blocks as Africa? Panel, I've clearly stated that we are developing nations and we need stronger economies. We need to enhance our operations. So we need free flow of labor. Human resources are a fundamental element to any operation. So when you have these blocks, they have policies in place whereby one is allowed to move freely to another nation. One is allowed to conduct the operations in another nation without fear of intimidation, without fear of being imposed heavy taxes on their goods. So if we have free flow of labor, which is enhanced by these regional blocks, it will indubitably boost us as Africans. We need these things because these borders being opened up to for a country, because we also have these establishments have an aggregated way in which they use their operations. So, because of that, we'll have masses of people from other regions being able to actually conduct operations with an establishment of another region. So, therefore, we feel that us having these establishments, it will also create that sense of urgency for us to have partnerships for one establishment to have partnership with another establishment so that business and operations are easily conducted. Not for me when we reach the 5th country. Also, this establishment will lead to us having ease in cultural exchange. Why do we need to exchange our cultures? Why is it relevant? Because belonging to a certain group of people and feeling the patriotism in you, being an African. This is relevant because why is it relevant that we have one voice? Because you all agree with me that in any setting, when a party has more to lose than gain, they inevitably feel that they are at the mercy of the other party. And this will lead us to having that bargaining power, in that when you want to borrow probably loans from other nations to do something, when you go there as a cause, we will have higher chances of us attaining that, because being a big organization and being at high states of, because if for a region the all things that we have a lot of people being involved there, therefore these lenders will feel that we will do whatever we can in order to pay our debts, therefore we will have more probability of being loaned those funds. So if you go there as probably Uganda, if you go there as Kenya, we'll have less chances of us having that fund. And this will lead to regional infrastructural development, because we need to enhance our operations. And you will agree with me that if investors see that we are progressing as nations, as regions, they will also come here to invest in these countries because of the enhanced infrastructural developments, because of the policies that favor their businesses and operations, and the safety that is brought about by that sense of protection of the policies put in place by these organizations. So go ahead.
So we specifically said that we want to give them a bigger pool. We'll work with this make the aid to facilitate growth and development, and countries can go together, really guide any policies that they have to follow.
So that rebuttal, my worthy DLO will come here and will answer that. So panel, that is all we have from the airport and rest of this.
Thank you, Honorable Nixon. We welcome the Deputy Prime Minister to the floor.
I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Hello, let's first start with the rebuttal and responses that we get from Zara as the open opposition, right? Firstly, they come here and they have a big case about needing to have stronger economies and free flows whatsoever that they send to us, right? Panel, Kirapati came here and clearly told you that we need this, we actually consider to have the same, right? But what we don't understand and what we are fighting for is to actually have this on a larger scale, which actually benefits the whole Africa as a whole, which is what is not happening within opposition side of the case, right? And we feel that they exacerbate this in the manner which they are saying this, right? And we find this very problematic within 250. And secondly, we further think that this is also not mutually exclusive to everyone, right? They come here and tell us about how we need to have stronger economies and free flows, but they don't actually tell us why is this important. They don't actually tell us why is this true and how does this best work in this side of the case, right? And secondly, they also came to tell us about economic development. Panel as well, as Gilbert has also told you, why it is also mutually exclusive within our side of the case, that we also find that we can't get to actually engage inside of in the side of opposition, right? And the sense of security that they are also mentioning and telling us about, right? But they don't actually show us how this actually materializes. They don't actually tell us about how this is unfolds and why is this true and why should we actually consider to what they're saying, right? And why it actually best work in their side of the case, right? Closer to the matter. Panel, we don't think we can achieve a lot when countries, we think we can achieve a lot when countries actually work together without actually being within the regional blocks in Africa, right? And I'm going to give you a counterfactual that Rapids has also actually established within today's debate and our side of the story, right? We tell that we actually need, with this being implemented, we get a larger pool of people we can work with, right? These are the countries that we don't, that other countries never thought that actually can work with, right? These are the countries with minerals, these are the countries that can actually offer us water, these are the countries that can actually offer us electricity and stuff like that, right? But we're going to show you why is this true and how this actually materializes within our side, and we're going to show you why this is important within today's debate. So firstly, we want all countries in Africa relation. We want this relation that is actually mutually exclusive for everyone within the country that is not within the regional blocks, right? Yeah. So we're going to show you why this is a win as well within our side of the case, and why is this true. And I would think these countries, which are our major actors within today's debate, actually feel that their economies are not actually developing properly because of certain countries not being within this region, right? For an example, South Africa still feels like if they would actually work with Kenya, we would do better in terms of how they treat people, in terms of the securities that exist within Kenya and stuff like that, right? And they think at a point where we can do away with this region, we think we can better maximize the utilities that we get in other countries that can also be beneficial for everyone and us as the actors within today's debate, right? And another example is South Africa working with Lesotho for water. Panel, we tell you that we also want countries to also have a piece of cake of what we as South Africa are actually fighting for. We also want a piece of cake on what Lesotho is actually offering us. But we can't actually do this because certain countries are not actually included within this specific regional blocks, right? And we also find very problematic with today's debate, and this is why we also need to regret them, right? So the regression of these establishment incentivizes these countries to have a platform where they feel they can benefit within the whole Africa instead of actual countries that already exist within those specific people, right? So what are the harms? Panel 1, we tell you that regional organizations end up being stingy and self-centered. How do they do this? Panel, we feel that these people already know who they work with, right? They already know how they can actually end up bullying a person or a specific country, in the manner in which they want something to happen, right? We tell you that they end up being self-centered and think about how this only best caters them as an individual country, and how this is and how we also find this very problematic within today's debate, right? And secondly, they have this gang-like nature that actually exists within this specific region. Panel, we have these people that, for example, I as Alex am going to work with Kepapeti, and then they are a certain country. They won't want to work with me because they already have this thing that they're ganging up against Kepapeti because of their issues that they already have within that, right? And we also find this is very problematic within today's debate, and this is why we also need to get rid of that, right? Thirdly, we tell you how these regional blocks we're going to tell you how these regional blocks create competition within these countries, right? And this actually endangers these countries, right? How does this actually materialize? Panel, these regional blocks actually have this competition idea that instead of us working together, we're going to actually use these people, right? We're going to actually get these people to actually we're going to compete with these people in order to get someone else's idea, right? And we also think this is very problematic within today's debate. So how do these harms happen? Firstly, countries within the blocks cater for themselves only, right? And we think this and I've told you how this actually materializes, right? Why is our counterfactual very important within today's debate, right? It is important because it reminds Africans of who we are and what we actually believe in while catering for everyone, right? And while we actually being mutually exclusive to everyone within these countries, right? And this, we tell you how this will stop situations such as xenophobia, which already exists within today's world, and we also need opposition to engage with that. And lastly, we tell you why we give you a bigger pool to work with inside government, right? So what have I done in today's debate? But before I get to the actual conclusion, let me just also revisit the policy-orientated, these policies that exist within these specific regional blocks, right? Firstly, these people, these economies, these policies are economy developed, right? They alleviate poverty, yes. They also have trade policies, and they solve countries' conflicts. We get that panel, and this includes us, irrespective of what we actually say. We don't dispute anything that these specific regional blocks are catering for, right? Which is also one thing we also understand, which is why we also want that. But we are actually striving for them to do it at a better rate, where it actually includes everyone within today's debate, which are our biggest actors that exist within today's debate, right? So, what have I done, just to sum up? I've dealt with 3 battles, and we've also gave you an analysis on how we actually have a counterfactual that best caters within today's debate, right? And we also put that we deserve to be in this debate.
Thank you, Prime Minister. These are the different Wait, can you please wait for him to come back? Wait for him to come back.
It's fine, so you can just be.
You want to wait for me?
The Deputy Prime Minister. Are you ready? No, are you ready? The time starts now.
So I think the OG completely forget to tell us what is Africa division looks like, especially these countries that want to form these regional blocks. And secondly, they fail to tell us what these regional blocks looks like, so that we actually get. Now, I can tell you that this regional block, this is how they look like. Now, these are nations that have these regional blocks. Sometimes most of them share the same resources. They share the same identity. They share the same problems. And therefore, they understand themselves more compared to Kenya and Egypt. For example, if I'm in East Africa, we understand that Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania understand themselves better compared to Egypt and also even Europe. I feel like their point about self-inclusion really does not exist or does not really help, because first of all, we already have discriminations in these Africanized world. For example, like African Union, we already have these things. But why is it that we don't have these kind of advantages that can happen? Because we see how we hear that the Sub-Saharan Africa are separated from the North Africa. You hear that the North Africans, they recognize themselves as the Arabs. In fact, the Sub-Saharan say that they're blacks. And yet they are the same organization. It means that these advantages they're talking about cannot really prosper or cannot really manifest in this world today. Already, the idea of self-inclusion is really happening right now, even with the existence of African Union, even with the existence of these all international bodies that we have. Now, finally, we tell you first of all that these regional blocks, we need to understand what is the main purpose of them. First of all, it is, as we told you by the organization told you, that these regions existed and were formed for economic empowerment, like through having full access of their markets. Like, for example, having free trade. Like, we don't really have to impose high tariffs on these countries that we really are close to. You realize that the current status is that we do not have that enough power. We don't have that enough market access to European Union, to those countries that we want to. But we realize that we don't want to have that enough electric bargain when we come together. For example, right now, we have regional infrastructure developments. For example, like LabSet in East Africa. These things cannot happen if Kenya itself is close to that. You realize that these regional blocks, for example, like WASO or East Africa, when they want to build this regional social infrastructure development like LabSet, they don't want to have that kind of advantage of having this higher bargain. Now, finally, we also want to tell you that the openness market, because we tell you that already we have these poor countries or these poor countries that already exist in these bodies. We find that in the continental bodies already again they are facility to be poor and things like that. That there's this already existing discrimination. But that discrimination does not, as much as it might exist in this kind of regional bodies, but it doesn't happen to the extent of the OG, because this is good. Look how this happens. These regional blocks, first of all, most of them tend to have the same currencies. For example, like the EU. Remember that the currency is such an important thing that actually affects the economy or the economic performance of these regional bodies. So, for example, let's assume that Kenya is economically dominant in East Africa. Kenya cannot really want Ghana to have poor currency, have poor economic performance, because at the end of the day, if Ghana have poor economic performance, then it is the whole economic affair. That if Tanzania failed to produce enough maize next year, then Kenya is also going to get disadvantaged from such effects. So you feel like these poor countries in these regional blocks, they also tend to get benefit, as opposed to their case where they say that they tend to be selfish. We don't really think that selfishness might maximize. We think that selfishness does not manifest in our one, because we tell you that first, these countries, they want to cooperate together. They want to have free trade, and they care for the economic performance of all of them. That if one of them gets to perform poor, then it affects the regional growth. Let me have it go on.
So basically what we are saying is that we want them to have access to the whole of Africa, free market for everyone. Kenya can go to any country in the range to have access to that market without any tax or anything.
Yes, they're telling us that kind of many of them they already have that status quo. But you still find that countries like DRC, they still they want to join EAC. We need to ask ourselves, why is it that DRC still want to join EAC even if it is in the African Union? Reason is that there is no that support. The idea of Pan-Africanism is already closed, because in the first place it was that this political idea that was meant to put Africa politically autonomous. That thing is already dead right now, and these countries they have lost attention, and that the only way they feel like they can get attention is to reach out to their neighbors, reach out to their friends, which are near them, which actually understand them better, which understand their problems, which their problems actually affect them. Because really, we get affected by the war in DRC. Ugandans are getting affected by wars in DRC. Egypt does not fundamentally get affected by what is happening in DRC. So does Morocco, and so does South Africa, and things like that. These are neighbors that actually understand themselves better, and they understand the identity, they understand the problems that emerges as anything.
We consider and understand to this establishment of these regional blocks, right? But what we need them to move at a rate where it is actually mutually exclusive for everyone. Show us how this is mutually exclusive in your side of the world.
What they really fail to show us right now is that we're giving them an alternative, but they do not really tell us how making this the whole African issue has really helped the situations. Why do we have counties still running up to these regional blocks? Why do we have South Africans still stick to this kind of thing? They're not really telling us that. Because yes, I would like to Nigeria be in the same economic block by the Senegalese, but then at the end of the day, the problems that my neighbors will be able to actually understand the problems, something that Nigerians are not able to understand. Nigerians have their own problems, the West Africans have their issues that do who it does. Kenyans does not really have those kind of issues, so does Uganda, so does Tanzania. So we feel like because the reason that these people are neighbors, they are able to understand themselves better, and that really actually testify what we need to tell them. Now the case of self-exclusion, it is even already happening in the world, whereby we have these separate people that identify themselves differently. You hear that the North Africans identify themselves as North Africans. You hear that still there have been failures for these African bodies to understand or to solve these issues. We even told you how in our world, regional blocks promotes social or regional social infrastructure development, like smartphones and things like that. We also tell you how these bodies comply. We told you it includes free trade, it includes free access of this thing out for these popular markets, something that have not been embraced by the whole African body. We also realize that we find that, for example, in East Africa, we have
And to confirm, they're going to be added.
let's see.
Are you informed? Would you please change it?
whatever the motion asks of all of us, is that we should regret the establishment. We're not here to regret the regional blocks, and everyone, having gone away from that, doesn't necessarily mean that the closing has to deal with their mess. Now, if we are here to regret the establishment of these regional blocks, we need to have a metric of regret, something that has not been brought about in the entire house. A metric of regret for what exactly these regional blocks are, the establishment being the foundation of them. Back then, in the 70s, in the 80s, remember, it has been 40 years since the establishment of most of these regional blocks, 50 years, you could say 60 for some, say ECOWAS, 1975 to today, give or take around 40 years now. We are regretting the establishment because, first of all, the cause, that's what we'll give you as OG, or as CG, first of all, because they were created, established for a very specific purpose. If you are to regret the formation of them, you have to have a reason to be regretting that. Why were they formed in the first place? Why were they established? We are regretting the establishment because every single thing that these regional blocks were put there to create, to form, to fight, how effective have they been? Because that is the first thing you should be hearing. Because if you have a metric of regret, you should be challenging how necessarily the effect has been brought about. But what we've not had, or what we've had basically from here, is the whole idea of Pan-Africanism, how wonderful it is that we can have the entire AU coming together and dealing with this. But understand, it doesn't necessarily, AU exists with all these regional blocks right now. It doesn't necessarily help. It could be salvaging where the regional blocks are failed. That being a counterfactual that was raised by them, not even helping anyone else, because the regional blocks exist to the AU, meaning it could be even better, but it's not. We are regretting the regional blocks being there. And why do they need the help from the AU? That was the only closest thing to a metric of regret that was brought to the house. The DPM brought about having a larger pool of persons to work with. And I don't necessarily think, and I will show you why this is a wrong thing eventually, but this is how we are going to distinguish ourselves from opening. The opposition had a weird and very fun case dealing with if Uganda has a poor currency, Kenya will eventually have a poor currency. Kuwait has the strongest currency in the world, not because it's next to the US or to Germany or to Britain, because of the demand that it has. So if you are entitled to period on how African countries look like and maybe they could weigh each other down, that is not what we have. Now, what we have, our metric of regret will look like this. First of all, why were they created? Why was SADC created? Why was COMESA created? Why was ECOWAS created? Why was the East African countries or community created? And how effective have they been in tackling whatever they had to? Why do we regret the establishment? First, because of the cause. They were created to fight a specific thing by specific leaders. Some of the best leaders up till date that we had back then. People still quote Julius Nyerere and people still quote Kwame Nkrumah. These are leaders who are so visionary. But right now, the type of leaders that we have, the caliber of leaders that we have are the most corrupt people out there. Once it was created by these regional founders, these big-brained persons, it doesn't necessarily help that it is handed over to people who do not necessarily know how to control these regional blocks, because the presidency of these regional blocks is passed from one president to another, meaning the focus does not stay the same throughout this entire period that these presidents are there. Understand the causes that they are all trying to fight changes from every single election leading to another. 4 years Kenya was having the whatever is being passed on by the president of Kenya to the one of Angola this week. So understand that everyone has a different agenda that they're trying to fight, and they will never get the number of years that is expected to actually ensure that they do everything successfully. So causes that they have changed from time to time. They don't have the time to actually institute whatever progress that they have, whatever SADC is out there to do. But another very important thing that has not been talked about is the ineffectiveness of these regional blocks. One of them would be, say, Tanzania pulled out of COMESA. Why did he do that? They regret being there. Lesotho pulled out of COMESA. Mozambique did. Namibia did. All of these countries decided to do this because, first of all, it's not that they were the only ones there. There were a lot of people there, but they saw that there are a lot of things that they're not gaining because you have minimal gains from being in these regional countries, and you do not even gain whatever you need to be gaining by being in these regional blocks. Because if it's a free trade area, it means all these people default on their taxes from the landlord countries that need to be paying for the taxes that they get to pass their goods through these countries that have access to the sea. So Rwanda and Burundi, as much as everyone is trying to tell you that unity is strength, if you are two developing countries, and that was their case, two developing countries, two third world countries, four third world countries, who says 8 blind people can lead each other to cross a road well? Because that is the entire thing that they're trying to bring to the house. Understand this. These people have minimal gains in these regional blocks. They are getting worse by not charging the taxes that they would be if they were still by themselves earning because they should be in such regional blocks. Now, understand the following also. It has brought about a lot of segregation in terms of you have regions just choosing to annihilate or put a certain country out of it. East African countries, if it's about East African countries, not the East African community, you would have the entire block right there. But because it's about the community, people decide to segregate a nation like Somalia. And you do this for generations, but then you come to blame it in 2022, in 2025, in 2035, that they've not been able to keep up with you. Yet the regional bloc as the thing that has been voting to actually segregate these persons. It's not that they've always had Orena's leadership. Uganda did that, but they are still part of the East African community. But since all of these things are not controlled by anyone, you have a lot of people understand that have this metric of regret. They should not have been instituted at first, because even if they were there to help people, they were there to create a free trade area. It has brought a whole lot of harms, and it has not even instituted the policies that it wanted to institute in the first place. Another very important thing that we need to talk about is that I was telling you, you cannot lead 8 people who are blind to cross the road by themselves, because these are all developing nations. All developing nations cannot be there carrying one another's burdens when they need to be carrying their own burdens, leaving their taxes that they could be earning to go away just because you are now part of a regional bloc. This is our entire case, and this is why we need to win as the closing government. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your statement. We have the member for elections.
From the government, that was just major political grandstanding. We have decided to incorporate 2 factors, regional blocks and human factors. Let us look at some of these reasons. Why don't we have the establishment of these regional blocks? Let us look at regionalization. Like the whole idea of states in Africa interacting with themselves for their own mutual benefits through bilateral or multilateral treaties is what has actually marked these things. So let us consider what the actual regional blocks are. They are simply it's simply a response to a positive relation between the two, or maybe the states that are actually in the region. The effectiveness of the regional bloc is specifically tied to the human beings working in them. The actual strength of an organization is entirely dependent on how much it can produce, which is entirely dependent on the technical run. Let us consider the following factors: globalization and an increase in the attention to the interest of states and the interactions on the international community has simply increased because there is a necessary reason. There has been a demand for much more resources, much more financial gain, for much more mutual benefits between nations, which has entirely been a problem, especially if we consider the factor of bilateral and multilateral cooperation between states. There has been a concern that some states, which are actually powerful enough, they run their own veto and simply decide to have agendas that are not entirely helpful to every single member of the same collective organization, as they were proposing on issues of the African Union. And let us consider that, according to determinism, we as human beings, because this region of blocks are created by human beings and for human beings, are simply going to respond to the environmental factors and other factors that we cannot control. E.g., the only reason as to why there is PAUDC was because there was an increased trade, which actually led to the actual states thinking, well, why don't we incentivize more this? Because there is actually much more mutual benefits to both states than actually collectivizing a singular international organization. The only reason as to why this the EAC happened is because the actual trade between Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda in the first place. The same reason as other than the actual historical factors that led to these countries having the form of relation, it was entirely a response to the increased amount of trade and the increase in globalization and interaction between the border regions. That is essentially what led to the formation of this. So let us consider development and security and economics and other political factors.
So engage with the fact that as open government, we're trying to push the notion of globalization, giving them access to all the countries that they can maximize their productivity in terms of economic development.
Well, we understand that politically, national interests are specifically tied to the amount of gains that are essentially found. And data begs to argue that whether or not the interaction was important, it is entirely dependent on the individual, which is entirely related to as a state and maybe on the actual individual factors. Whether the access is granted or not, it is not entirely necessary. What necessitates that actual interaction comes up is whether or not the two states would like to benefit from that. And let us consider that if we talking about collectivization of the African Union, we have to understand that there are certain specific problems or tasks that will be tackled by neighboring states that do not essentially necessarily require the attention of all the other states. So in a bid to ensure that the actual problem is tackled, it will be essentially on this. Two states either have mutual relations or be part of a organization, because that specific problem or task that is actually required to be tackled may be specifically tied to a certain country, maybe local. So in the event that we are proposing to have much more collective, it begs the question, what about the other localized problems that we actually want to move on? So if we're looking at this, the actual argument, the argument that I have is to show the benefits and the necessity and the effect of the international organization, the regional groups and international relations. And let us consider the fact that much of the activities that have been pushed forward and promoted by the actual regional blocks have already been achieved, save for a few. But then let us also consider the fact that the actual effectiveness is entirely dependent on the people. And if we do claim that the actual regional block is no longer necessary simply because it was based on a certain period of time or maybe by a certain individual, but simply because it will have a specific purpose. Let us understand that as human beings, as we evolve, it is upon us socially to adapt to the actual problems and the actual situations that arise, which essentially depends to actually argue that whether or not we were colonized, whether or not the regional bloc was established, there had to be a form of cooperation that will be simply dependent by whatever positive or negative factor that essentially affects the people in the region, especially if it is more than a national problem. We have to understand the whole idea of inclusivity and utility maximization, on whether or not the actual regional bloc is actually looking out people for whatever case, is simply has no way to consider it. We have learned that in the absence of other human beings, we as human beings tend to be racist, tend to be selfish, we tend to simply behave as any other primordial organism in the animal kingdom. Our actions, whether or not we decide to maybe have some phobia, or whether we decide to simply have much more heavy environments, our actions are simply dependent on us. So, the long term, we do not regret because the regional blocks have proven to have actually adapted to much more problems that have actually been facing the actual people in the regions. The regional blocks have not entirely been made redundant by the actual problems that arise from them. And the problems that face the regional blocks and the whole interaction has been found to only stem from human factors and characteristics. That entirely sums up and says we are not regretting the establishment of the blocks because we have simply shown that the benefits are outweighing the actual problems that we claim. And secondly, human factors will always be at
Thank you very much, Major Opposition. If you have the receipt from government.
Yeah.
status quo, as a rebuttal to what we brought forward. Status quo has that African countries are actually dependent on foreign goods and services. This is just an rebuttal to economic dependence, and I'm showing you how this is actually not a benefit to the table. Economic dependence, first I've seen, is more of extreme dependence for African countries, and second, the irony being we are actually dependent on foreign goods that import, and that even affects trading blocks. So when pointing out security and adaptation to the problem, CO hasn't quite proven the truth of that. Now, on addressing opening cases, I'll just reiterate what our member said. We are questioning the cause of formation and how that reflects to the effect of trading blocks as it is right now. So we are, our position is supposed to prove that formation of these trading blocks, contrary to our where trading blocks would not have been formed, are proving more economic gain. And they haven't quite proven that because, for example, some results brought forth by opening is that of alienation of countries that are not in the trading blocks. We have what now I think primarily why the case, what member brought to the table, the nature of African countries. We're talking about one, corrupt leaders, two, minimal gains, and three, the different agendas of different countries that come with conflicts. The reason for African countries to deal out is because of that conflict that comes with the nature of trading blocks has that interdependence even with decision making, and that conflict, be it politically, socially, whatever the reason, actually directly affects the economic benefit. So because of those three primary reasons brought for the corruption of the leaders, which is something that opposition has failed to somehow reimburse as a major point when it comes to trading blocks, the different agendas and the minimal gains are actually resulting in prevent forming them in the first place because of the ineffectiveness that is clearly existing.
So basically you're saying that we have gains that yet they're minimal. Can you tell us compared to one where we get these gains which are more than these minimal gains in our world?
Proving minimal gains is that say the reason for forming trading blocks were supposed to be Tanzania benefiting from Uganda. What we have now is states like Kenya, which are in these trading blocks, importing. We have the impact on taxes, like my member said, and what that does to your own exports to Tanzania, where you could have otherwise exported to whichever country not in trading block. So with that rather reduced tariff, where you would have otherwise sold to a country separate what Europe, the advantage is actually significant. We are actually proving that with trading block, without trading block, there is benefit. We are proving also with trading block, with the reason that they're bringing to the table actually does not work because of the reasons that have been brought forth. So regional blocks do have benefits to what you were saying and all that. Addressing the nature of Africa, addressing the nature of how it is being done, we are not seeing the benefit. That is why we regret that formation of say trading blocks. So panel, I think why particularly closing takes the cup today is because we've addressed the reason for regretting the formation of, because opening brought up limitations to countries like Togo exposed to minerals in South Africa, but we're pointing out reasons for, in fact, countries within the trading blocks, and even those that are not in trading blocks. Yes.
Thank you, government. We have last questions.
is the benefit of these regional blocks versus the existence of a common block. And this is where first we're talking about the benefits of these regional blocks. First things first, when the closing government came to us and told us about the metric of regret, why they were even being formed in the first place, I thought he was going to come and tell us that they were formed in the first place because of the common problems that these people in these specific blocks were facing, and they saw it necessary for them to create these blocks. For example, you have the EAC, you have the COMESA. They saw it necessary for them to be able to create these regional blocks so that they can be able to tackle these problems that they were facing. Also, another thing, I'll just go ahead and give about a speech. So, first things first, what we get from the opening government side is that they're trying to give us on the concept of productivity, trade, Pan-Africanism. Those are very good points, but not so good for this motion, because what we are trying to talk about in this motion is on the establishment of these regional blocks, whether we have got to enjoy the benefits, and it's from these regional blocks. For example, in Eastern Africa, for example, the EAC, what benefits have the member states of this EAC got to enjoy? What have they got to benefit, and why are we here? And why are we here as the EAC? So another thing that they came to us with this point on competition between states. Now, for example, I'll take an example with the EAC. We are talking when you tell us about competition between these states. The EAC, for instance, was formed so that they can be able to help these countries, to help the member states grow economically, to help these member states be able to develop. So when you talk about competition between these states, it's not competition between these states. It's actually adding up to a benefit of these regional blocks, because when they create competition, that is how human beings are in general. Because when you're telling me that you are forming a regional block, where you're forming a regional block, it will just help us be able to produce more, so that you can be able to work towards development. Or where we even establishing these regional blocks, we are not even aiming for development even in the first place. So on another point on the existence, that is on the benefits of the regional blocks. Moving further to the existence of a common block. On the existence of a common block, this will be like what this will lead to is the localization. And when we talk about localization, this is what my partner was just talking about when he said on the point of localization, where we are considering the interest of the states in these specific regional blocks. So moving ahead on the moving on. They also came to us, just a minute, they also came to us with this point of inclusivity, with their point of inclusivity. What is the main point of having a regional block? If you are not even including, when you are talking about inclusivity, we are already including people from this specific regional block, so that you can be able to work together, so that you can be able to work towards a certain goal, a certain objective that we have placed towards the formation of these regional blocks. So I'm moving ahead. Moving ahead, and I'm not going to take any clear because you have not brought in social matter to this committee. So moving ahead, and talking about why we even have these regional blocks in the first place. My partner went ahead and talked about regionalism. And what we talk about when we talk about regionalism, first I just said I'm not taking anything from you because you have not brought in some social matter to this committee. So first, we are aiming for development. What you get from regionalism, you cannot tell me that the moment that the EAC was formed, the moment COMESA was formed, the moment SADC and other regional blocks in Africa were formed, that there is nothing that has happened towards them. The member of government here came and told us that this was formed because, for example, quoting Julius Nyerere, quoting I don't know who and who and who. Look, people are using these references so that they can be able to use them, so that they can be able to sort out the problems that they have currently. That's the problem that we have right now, and that is why we are not even regretting the establishment of these regional blocks, because we're using them so that you can be able to better the situation that we have right now. Now moving ahead to talk about on the point of when you talk about regionalism, you talked about even security. Having these regional blocks, they have also helped us in the form of security. They have also helped us in dispute resolution in case anything happens between these states, because we do not have because it gives us the essentiality that you do not have to about economic and political benefits that we get to enjoy from this case. And for instance, when you're talking about economics, we are obviously talking about trade. Where we can be able to trade freely between these states. Where Kenya can freely trade with Uganda, can freely trade with Tanzania on the goods that will be of interest. He also went ahead and talked about he went ahead and talked about most of these problems being caused by human factors. You know, and that is what I was debating on this case when he was talking about the ineffectiveness. And that is what we are actually getting as a whole from the government side, talking about the productivity and ineffectiveness. And what we come to, and this is where my partner was talking about human factors. We are human, and this is whereby, for example, when we have this leader, and when you have these people in this, when you have a certain group of people, these people are the people who are going to influence us. They are going to influence us whether we are going to be productive or not. They are going to influence us whether they are going to influence us on whether we are going to be productive or not, and they are also going to make us be able to make an improvement on the regional block and make an improvement of this member states. Yes, or also make an improvement of this member states, and this is where we win. Yes, and this is where we win. First, when he came here, he told us that regional blocks were a response to an increased positive relations between member states. And this is what we are striving to maintain. We are striving to maintain the positive relations that we have formed from these regional blocks. We are trying to maintain these benefits that we have got to enjoy as member states of these specific regional blocks. And that is very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the government and the opposition side. Give us 2 minutes to deliberate. Now, why these rankings? So, opening opposition placed fourth because one, there was a lot of logical gaps with your points and like very little analysis. So, especially on the points of like stronger economies. That was a really good point. Like the regional blocks helping countries in them having like a stronger economies. But like I would have loved to like see a deeper level of analysis on that. You did give some analysis, but like you kept jumping from one thing to another. You could put a point here, not really explain about it, and then leave, go to another point, come back to that point, then not give a lot of analysis on that to then go to another point. And like the deputy leader of opposition did a definitional challenge, which is something that the leader of opposition could have done. So for like the next debate, if you're gonna be the deputy, if you're gonna be, you should be the leader of opposition and you should be the deputy leader of opposition. Because what you did is something that the leader of opposition should have done, something that I would have loved, like we as a whole would have loved to see in the leader of opposition speech. So the definitional challenges, the question asked, the engagement, the analysis was even much better than the one that the leader of opposition did. So, like for your next debate, keep that interchange goals if you're in this position. Yeah. So for third place, we gave it to closing opposition. Granted, we had like you did a really good contextualization, but like you kept beating around the bush. You gave a really like you could give really good points, but then like not elaborate on them or like go out of context and then come back. You spent a lot of time contextualizing while you could have spent that time elaborating more on your points. So next time, like contextualize a little bit. If you're gonna follow the line of the people who are on the opening bench, then contextualize a little bit, like make it, you contextualize for like 3 minutes, which is something you could have done like a minute and a half, and it could have helped like build your case and like elaborate more on your points. For the whip, you did a lot of engagement. Like you're the only person on that entire bench that actually engaged with all the people from different benches, which is something I love to see. But like you also didn't really give like deep analysis. So you could rebut the like surface level things. So next time if you're gonna rebut, like focus on like breaking down like your rebuttals. Like if you're gonna analyze something, like make sure you analyze everything on that. Now, this was a government, this closing, he did a really good job. Like, you really, as a member of government, you did a really good job. Like, you asked really good questions. Your speech was the best speech of the entire thing. Now, this is something you all agree on now. You did a really good job. Now, what cost you the round is because your whip was not there the entire debate. Like, I feel like she could have done a better job if she was here the entire debate to actually hear what went on. Because what she did unite the opening, and she came back and took the knife out on one of the points. So if she could have gone along with, it's okay. She's here the next round. The next round, you might take it. I don't know. But if she also did really good analysis, but she wasn't here. She could not really analyze throughout everything. And also she was jumping around. Like, you can work on structuring your speech, that you don't go from one thing to another. But for the member of government, like your speech was well structured, you gave really good analysis, you contextualized well, you did a good job at knifing, even though you were knifed bad. But yeah. For opening, you guys had good analysis, you contextualized well, you mechanized all your points, but the problem was your points were really easy to attack, which is what everybody did on the opposition bench. But if they had gone a step ahead and like actually really put in the work and actually put your points down, because they were really easy to attack, you guys could have lost. But they did a poor job at that, which is, and their people not doing a good job is yeah, but granted, you guys had, like, your speeches were really well structured, like, you guys analyzed, they were actually well structured, for real. You guys analyzed well your points, even though some points, like, some claims were left standing that they do not have a lot of analysis, especially in the Deputy Prime Minister's speech, like, the point on xenophobia, we not really analyze that. You guys have a good point. So one thing I would suggest is have like 3 really strong points. Like he can contextualize into everything and then talk about one point. And then if you're Deputy Prime Minister next time, talk about the other 2 points. Like thoroughly analyze them rather than having a lot of points and like not analyze all of them. Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, it was a really good debate. I wish you luck for your next rounds. Do you guys want to add anything?